Hi, welcome to the Lobang Podcast. This is a place where we talk about topics that we don't usually talk about in the open. So, we are your hosts for today. I'm Crow,
And I'm Grim.
and today joining us we have Mr. K, and I heard he's a poker player. So, welcome, Mr. K.
Hello,
Welcome,
hello. Thanks for having
welcome.
me on here.
So, Mr. K, both of us, we know that you are in the poker scene. So, whenever we mention someone who's a poker player, the first image that would pop up is someone who's filthy rich, smokes cigars with a glass of scotch. Can you tell me how accurate is that image?
In my opinion, it's completely the opposite, actually. There are people who are filthy rich, smoking cigars and drinking scotch while playing poker, but a vast majority of the pro scene is actually a bunch of young and fairly nerdy people dressed up in their hoodies and really slouched over the poker table and really just grinding the hours, putting the time and effort. They are more like nerds than people who are rich, but they are definitely rich people who we call whales as well. But usually whales are people who are affluent enough to play the game, but they don't really go through the technical terms and they don't really know much about the game to be good at it.
Oh, so basically they're just rich and they just want to have fun.
Yeah, so there's a huge spectrum. There's people who are really good at it and are also rich, but most of the time the richest and the high rollers as we call them, they're usually not as good as you think. The games actually get easier the bigger you play.
I
Yeah,
see, I
yeah.
see.
So isn't it? Won't you think that it's like wasting money? Do you think it's like a way for them to burn their money? Cause like they have nowhere else to spend.
I think so. This is something I've discussed with a few friends before. So what I think is that basically, whenever a billionaire or whatever, for example, let's just say Elon Musk, let's say that a billionaire has already conquered their field thoroughly. They're already top 10 in the world in terms of fortune, and they already conquered their fields, their own fields respectively. They tend to move to another field to try to, have more competition. So some rich people might go for things like golf. So you see a lot of rich people go for golf, while some might go for poker because poker is something that is highly competitive and it's not something that you can just win just because you have a lot of money. So you could be the richest guy in the world and I could still beat you 9 out of 10 times because of how I've studied the game or how I've learned the game. Same for anyone else who has put in the time or the effort to study the game thoroughly.
I see. So
Oh,
it's not technically 100% luck, right? It's more okay on the scale of like maybe 100%. How many percent would you think it's based on skill, and how many percent would you think it's based on luck?
Oh, you could just say it's 50-50, but maybe realistically, you could say that there is a specific statistic that said that the top grinders or poker players out there actually win around 70 to 80% of the time, disregarding variance. So let me just introduce you to what is variance. Basically, variance is something that everyone goes through because it's basically the luck plays a huge factor in this. So basically, there will be times when even if you play correctly, you lose. But 70% of the time you will win. So you have the edge there. It's not just 50-50, but you got the 20% edge, and that's where you make the money as a professional poker player.
no, I always thought it was 50-50, like more to luck, to be honest. But you mentioned that there were more nerds, like younger people, maybe at your level. I'm not sure. Are you considered like a pro player?
Well, I'm not all the way at the top, but I can tell you that uh, recently, poker, actually since the start, poker has been something that has a lot of young people coming in. There's a lot of young blood, and they all are. Poker used to be a sport where it used to be a lot of a flashy entertainment and stuff like that. But nowadays, there's a lot of young blood coming in. They are like math nerds. They really know their odds of winning this specific hand down to the specific percentage. So they tend to have an edge over everyone else. So over time, poker might seem boring, especially if you play it online, because that's where all the math nerds, they crunch the numbers and they put in the long hours and time just to squeeze out the slight edge to make a living. But you still see from time to time, there's always a bunch of whales and rich people coming in, people from all genders and age. It's the only sport where you will sit down on the table and you will see people from all kinds. You might see a young kid in a hoodie, you might see an old man with a cup of coffee in his hand, you might see a lady, you might see someone who is probably a crackhead or halfway broke. So there's a huge spectrum of players, but the ones that succeed and the ones that you see a lot because they grind and they win consistently, those are the nerds because, they consistently win and they don't bust out so soon or that quickly.
That's so unexpected because, in how like all the movies, they always portray poker players as like very successful, very cool looking guys, But then, if you said there's a lot of young bloods coming in, how did you get into poker in the first place?
Okay, so just let's start with the movie thing. The movie thing is completely fake. So especially if you watched like Casino Royale, like the James Bond movies,
stuff.
yeah, all those stuff, it's completely unrealistic. There's no such thing. The things like that really happen like never, or maybe like 0.1% of the time in real life. So yeah, movies are not really a good representation. It's over glamorized and overhyped in movies. In real life, it's more chill and mundane. With how I started, basically, since I was of relatively young age, I have always been a huge fan of actually gambling or even competitive. Basically, I was a very competitive person, and I used to be a huge gambler, you could say. As I found out about poker, I realized there was something that you could actually apply skill to. So back then, when I was gambling, at first you might start off just blindly gambling with something that you have no odds of winning, and then some people move towards sports betting, which is actually still quite a relatively new thing, especially esports betting. So those are things where you can do your analysis and actually have an edge. And then after that, after finding out poker, I fell in love with it, and I've been playing it ever since. It's been many years, but I started when I started with fake money when I was around 16 or 15, and that was with fake money. And after that, only I started using real money.
Oh, you mentioned fake money as in like you're just trying out gambling lah, right?
For poker, it was fake money, so I didn't know where else to play poker, so I played it on Zynga Poker, which is an online app that you can find on Facebook or all that kind of stuff. It's just virtual money, it's not real. Yeah.
Okay, so do you think that poker should be deemed as illegal, or do you think they should open up more, what do you call that? You know how Hong Kong, right? There are places
So
where
like
you can
poker
play
clubs?
mahjong. Yeah, more poker clubs around to be basically, how do you call it, more mainstream, though people are more easy accessible. So even if you go to Genting, right? So if you go up Genting, maybe you have to be at a certain age to go into casino. That's one thing. That's the first thing.
Yeah.
And second thing is what? There's only how many tables in Genting? Maybe like 4, 5, 6 tables.
Yeah.
Right in Genting that has like that plays poker, and their stakes are like very, very. I believe it's very, very high lah. So
Okay, so let me just tell you.
Yeah.
Basically, because we're in Malaysia, especially in Malaysia, poker is not, gambling in general is not legalized. So there can be no other places that can operate legally outside of Genting. But there are places that operate underground in KL and everywhere in Malaysia, but those are the underground scene. So legally, only Genting can operate. Only Genting has the license to operate. So in Genting, there's 6 tables, and usually there's only 4 that's full, and 4 means like 9 a table, so like 30, 40 people. And the stakes are okay. It's not too high. It's there's a range, and usually it's what everyone can somewhat afford. It's called 510 or 1020. So it's basically in poker there's the small blind and the big blind. You put $5 and $10 every round. Every circle you put like every round you put $5 or $10 depending on your position. So 510 is considered relatively small actually because it's the smaller you can go is 5-5 or even 1-2. But the problem with those sizes is that people just start splashing around. They don't even know what they're doing, which could be good and could be confusing to someone who actually knows how to play as well. So why Malaysia doesn't legalize it? I think because Malaysia is an Islamic country, gambling is actually just illegal. But if you look towards the US or even Taiwan, they have poker clubs outside of the casino all around the city, which are legal. And in Japan, where I think gambling is actually illegal, they actually do have poker clubs as well. But inside the poker clubs, they play with fake money. So they're sitting down on a real table with real chips, but they're playing with fake money. Something like a tournament, but it's more of like a leisure thing for Japanese people. And same for Taiwan and the US. In the US, it's actually really casual. That's how most people make their money because people just go to the casino playing poker thinking it's gambling. So they just spew all their money and the grinders eat it all up. That's how it usually
I
works.
see. Hey, I heard Genting recently had a what do you call it? Poker Dream Festival. What is it called? Like a poker tournament?
Yeah, like a tournament.
Yeah, it's like I think recently in Iran, like a few months ago. So did
Yeah.
you manage to hop on there and like take a look at the scene or?
Yeah, so basically I did join one of the events and I did go in the money, which means that I did make the prize money. It wasn't a lot, but basically that's a good sign for Malaysia as we head towards a better future overall for poker, because poker used to be very underground, it used to be shady. For years, it's been 10, 20 years. And now I have friends who have even started a cruise in Penang. A close friend of mine started a cruise in Penang that actually sails out to what they call it, international waters to host poker games legally.
Yo.
And
So-
it actually goes out every Saturday and Sunday. If anyone is interested, they can check it out on Facebook. It's called Poker Mojo, and it's completely legal, and it's safe, and they have food, and you just have to pay a small fee to get on the cruise. It's not that expensive. So yeah, it's actually a close friend of mine. Go support them if you can.
Oh, that's insane. That's insane.
So, yeah, from what I know, like from you, I can tell like playing poker is like seems like a lot of fun, to be honest. But the only downside is that it's gambling. I mean, it's not really a downside, but a lot of people they see it in a bad light, you know.
In a
There's
negative
always a
way, lah.
stigma. Yeah, basically yes. There's always a stigma about poker in general, lah. Like it's always seen as a negative activity. But from what I know, it doesn't harm anyone, and you guys are just having fun. I mean, it seems that way. Do you think? So why do you think it's seen as a, negative and also illegal thing to do?
I see. Okay, so from my perspective, you can't really say it's a positive thing as well, because I've had friends or acquaintances or people I've seen who just sat down with their last $1,000 or last $500 and just punted it away. Punt means like throwing it away, and that's not really a good thing for poker. And if you win that money from them, it's not a good feeling as well. It's like you've just won this person's entire month's rent, months of rent. So like it's like not really a good feeling. And to be honest, it depends. You have to look at the perspective. If this person doesn't have enough money to play, so in poker you need something called a bankroll, meaning that let's say one buy-in is $100, for example. You need to at least have 50 or 30, at least 30 buy-ins, so 3,000 to sit down for that $100 buy-in, because then you will sit down without the stress that you will not be able to think and play properly with all that stress on you. This is your whole month of food or rent, and then you just sit down and you just punt it all away. Then you just feel like shit, and it's exactly the same as gambling at that point, because you don't have enough of a bankroll to sustain or tank, as they call, tank the variance. So similar to a lot of things, even I think in trading as well, you need to have a sustainable bankroll so that let's say you lose this trade, but you win the next 9. You never know, right?
Yeah,
And there's a
true.
really degenerate thing they say that a lot of people say is that uh, every player that quits poker, every player that quits right before they are going to run good or run lucky. That's what they say. It's a degenerate term, meaning that you shouldn't quit. You should keep playing. But that's just a joke. But
That's
uh,
insane.
but that's just a joke. But people should actually manage their expectations, their financial situation before trying to play because it's a dangerous game. And if you cannot manage one of the most important things, which is your emotions, and your tilt factor, you will go down a deep rabbit hole. You might actually buy in way more. What's worse is not that, especially in underground games, is that it's not that you don't have any money anymore. It's that you go into debt because they give you the credit upfront, so you don't need to pay them cash. Whereas in Genting or places like casinos or poker clubs outside overseas, you have to pay the cash. Then they'll give you the chips. But in the underground scene, it's all credit based and it's all based on trust. So basically, you just sit down, you say, I want 5K, then you just get 5K. And then if you lose that or you win, however you win, on how much you win on top of it, they'll transfer the money to you or they'll pass it to you in some form. Or if you lose, then you just give them the balance, you know? So some
It's like a
people just
more
go away.
friendly,
Yeah,
like,
it's all
yeah.
based on trust. So
I see, I see.
if someone goes overboard and they lose too much, then they go into deep debt, and then there's the problem where the host has to chase through various means, or maybe the person just doesn't pay and just disappears, and then most likely you won't see them in the poker industry anymore. So there have been cases where I've known people who just disappeared. I've had people who owe me money. I have people who actually there are some that owe a lot of money and they don't disappear. So there's that. So there's a lot of different kinds of individuals. So
But
yeah,
but doesn't this seem like the whole scene, I mean, the underground scene is encouraging people to play poker, like gamble, even though they don't have money left and they know it, but they still encourage them to do so.
you mean the underground
Yeah,
people who operate poker houses or
yeah,
hosts?
yeah.
Well, technically, it depends on the host because as long as there's players, my game can run, I can make money, then that doesn't matter anymore. The money I make might be able to cover, and if the person is somehow not able to pay me back, that doesn't mean not able to pay me back right now, doesn't mean that he won't pay me back in the future. So technically, I don't lose money. So in the end, I make money. So my job is to just run and host games, and the player's job is to make sure that they can afford to lose and they can pay on time. So you would say that is it that they are encouraging? No, they are always going to run game regardless of your financial situation as a player. So it's up to you to control and know if you can sustain the variance, because sometimes for a small game, you might even lose up to the thousands. For games that buy in for 100 or 200, you might lose a few thousands because of variance or because of tilt or bad emotions, bad emotional control. And if you think about games that buy in for thousands, then you might lose tens of thousands. So then there's the debt issue. So trust is a huge factor in poker. There's a lot of, although it's a game that we always say that you bluff, I bluff you, you bluff me. But it's a game where trust exists almost in every corner, and integrity is of utmost importance. So basically, if one person has shown that they are a person who is not not who people cannot trust. Basically, if this person is someone who is a scum or a scammer or something like that, from then on, he'll have difficulty finding underground games to play in. He will difficulty, even hosting games or even being in the scene
Right,
or the industry in general.
I
Same
see.
as anything
right.
else. Same as
So
business, actually.
yeah, so people are just in it for the game, lah. They just want to have fun and stuff. But money comes in for this game. So there are many types of players, right? Obviously, like you mentioned, there are competitive players like yourself, and there's also like nerds where they count out the maths and stuff, and then the rich whales, And then there are people who are in debt because of playing poker or gambling in general.
Yeah.
But would you say you are addicted to this game?
Okay, so it depends on how the addiction is defined. So for me, poker is something. So let's just start with what you said: competitive and nerdy people. So in general, people who are competitive have to be nerdy to a certain extent because you have to know the numbers, you have to know what cards win, what are the odds, and you have to count your odds, etc., etc. So I would say that in terms of addiction, it depends on how a person defines addiction. If you play twice or three times a week, would you consider that as addiction? Then that is, if you feel like playing more than once a week is considered addiction, then that is addiction. But uh, back then, I used to feel like at a certain point back in my career or poker life or experience in general, I was addicted with the thrill of playing rather
Right.
than the overall how do I put it? Rather than the overall uh money that comes with it. But in my opinion, over time people just start to get used to the thrill and even the big huge amounts of money going in or out. Some people are just addicted to the thrill rather than the game. But over
Right.
time now I just play leisurely once to three times a week, depending on my mood. So now I actually play if I feel like playing rather than back then it was like, oh, come and play. Someone asks you to come and play, then I'll just be like, okay, sure, I'll come. But now it's more of like, okay, do I actually want to play? If I do want to play, then sure, I'll come and I'll bring my best game. So
Right.
it's more of now it's more of trying to be good at it and smart about it and trying to be the best in it and making sure that I have my emotions in control whenever I start a game. Because sometimes you're just so tired that you can't even control emotions. Even if you have your emotions under control, you'll just be so tired that you just
Yeah, you don't really
go
want to
play.
care.
Yeah, but then you somehow still kind of have to play because you're already there. So
Yeah.
I mean, you can leave, but then why did you come in the first place? That kind of thing. So, um,
Mm.
poker is something that you really have to manage your overall stress
I
response, in my
see.
opinion. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But from what I understand about addiction, let's put in a layman term, So addiction is more like you need to do something, or in for this example, poker, you need to do something in order to, how do I put this? Like you have to do it lah because you feel like you need to. So would you say like during your career last time, did you like move your schedules or anything important just to play poker?
Uh, okay. So, in my opinion, back then, let me see. Okay, so moving schedules just to play, um, it would be, yeah, there's definitely times where I would have just chosen to just move something out of the way just to fit in poker today, or maybe because of poker today that was already pre-planned. Same as any other activity, you plan it, whichever is planned first, then you
Mhm.
just push the others away. The problem with poker is that there's a high volume of games available most of the time. So if you pre-plan this whole week, for like let's say 4 out of 7 days in this whole week, pre-plan it a week before, then if anyone asks you out for, let's say, at the start of the week, you won't be able to join because you already have all the days pre-planned to do things or to play your game or even to host games or something like that. Basically, scheduling is this thing varies from player to player because some players have their time management and their discipline in check, and this won't be an issue. For me, I'm a person who is more relaxed with my planning and my time management, so that might be something that happens to me more than many other players. Because, in my opinion, I've seen players who have excellent high management. They juggle their 9 to 5 jobs and their extra poker side hustle, plus maybe some other activities with family or friends, and they juggle it perfectly. So I think this one comes in the end. This one comes down to personality. Is this person a person who is able to keep to his schedules that is set in stone?
Right.
For me, that's not me. I'm not I'm more of the go with the flow kind of
Go with the flow
person.
kind of guy lah.
Yeah. So that's not how
I
it's like
see.
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah.
But from what I think I know, usually poker games are held during the night, right? Like people even play in like daytime?
Yeah, there's a lot of games that actually happen in the daytime. Depending on let's give for example, let's say Genting first. So Genting is open 24/7, but their poker games usually start around noon, all the way until 6 a.m. The second morning. I mean, every day it's like that. It's noon, 1 p.m. to 6 a.m. There will be an influx of players, and maybe there might be 4 tables, maybe there'll be 1 table. So let's not talk about that. Let's talk about the underground scene. For the underground scene, it's mostly games usually can start from anywhere from afternoon, so maybe like 2 p.m., all the way to starting at around 10 p.m. and ending maybe at 6 a.m. So a game that starts at 2 in the afternoon might also end at 6 in the morning because there might be new players, there might be players that are losing, that are chasing their losses, or there might be a completely whole new group of players that just like subbed in, like replacements. Not really replacements, but because the people that came earlier just left for their dinner or went home to sleep, then somehow another bunch of players wanted to play, so they just continue. But usually it ends after one day, so it's like afternoon until morning. Standard stuff. It doesn't always have to start at night, and actually a lot of hosts that I know don't really want to start at night because at night it's just so shady. Everything is like weird, and people are tired, and people just want to live a healthy life as well. So like people always say like, hey, let's just do a healthy game, just start it in the afternoon and end it by midnight
Yeah.
so I can go back and sleep. But it usually doesn't end like that because people just want to continue and win or lose less or win more.
Just go all the way,
Yeah, they want to try their best.
I see. Hey, and then you're talking about like underground poker houses, Is it really that common that maybe, let's just say I'm living in a neighborhood, maybe my neighbor is actually just running a poker. Is it that common, or is it actually, are there like specific places where the poker houses
in
will
the
be?
poker community, they would share each other lah, right?
Yeah. Will you like will they like open their own houses whenever they want or wherever they want, or will they discuss with people around the area and see who else is opening so they don't open in like their turf
I see.
in some sort?
Okay, so usually you might think that there might be some discussion, but most of the time, someone, let's say, play host A, doesn't even know of the existence of host B, and they're both hosting at the same place. Sometimes it might happen like that, especially if the stakes, as in the size of the game, are different. So let's say the stakes I'm running is just a friendly home 1-2 or 2 or 5-5 or 2-5 game, and there might be a 25-50 just upstairs, or you never know. So
Neighbors, poker
to be
neighbors.
honest, yeah, you never know actually, because unless you play everywhere every day, you won't really know every single place. But I can say that it's more common than you think that you just go
Really?
past this place and there's actually a poker game running inside right now, or something like that.
Wait,
Just you don't know where.
do you
And
guys
maybe
have
it's
like
not
a
illegal.
Facebook community group for this or something? Like,
No,
doesn't
no,
have
no,
to be
because
Facebook, but
yeah, it's not safe to discuss things like this on Facebook because anyone can join the group. But what I can say is that basically there are places there's always places that are running. It's just a matter of if they're doing it as a business or like a friendly game among friends, because there are a lot of people that actually love poker in Malaysia, and not everyone wants to go to a poker house, which is a business, more of a business. They would rather just play a chill game with their friends at home, a friendly one. And these games usually are, although they are illegal, the authorities don't really care as much because first of all, they're not actually like running it as a business. It's like a Chinese New Year thing, but basically every day is Chinese New Year. So
Gong xi fa chai,
it's not
bro.
really, yeah. So it's not really you never know. But most of the time there's probably one in every condo. I would say you never know. A game
Way.
in every condo. You never know. I
No
mean,
way.
so you never know. But especially in places which are more central, that's for sure. But you never know, to be honest, and I don't know as well, to be honest.
Then okay, if that's the case, then how so let's just say I just want to go into like playing poker, but I don't want to go to Genting, travel 1 or 2 hours up to Genting every day to play.
Yeah, how would
So
you find out all
yeah,
this?
yeah. How would you find out? Is it through word of mouth, or do you have to contact a certain like type of people to know where to play?
Oh,
Yeah,
it's
what
definitely
if?
word of mouth.
But what if you're like a completely stranger? Like let's say I want to play poker, but I don't know any of my friends that are playing poker. Then how do I start?
So if you don't know any of your friends who are playing poker, there are ways to, because okay, first things first, players are valuable, especially players who can pay on time and can play long hours.
Wait, hold on,
So,
disclaimer. We're not, what do you call that? We're not encouraging all the young lads to go gamble, This is
Of course.
just a sharing session.
It's just a safe,
Just a
open
disclaimer,
space.
just a disclaimer, eh. Later kena kantor, bro.
okay,
Alright,
yeah, so
Mr. K, continue.
yeah, so it's not really something that, what was it? Basically, if you're a player and you want to play but you can't find anywhere to play, then if you're a player, you can actually go to the Facebook groups. Actually, I would recommend that. You just say, hey, anywhere near my area that I can play. Because then maybe hosts will contact you. They'll be like, hey, you can come join my game. And from there, you start meeting new people, more people. Then from there, from that one game, you might meet one more guy that will bring you to another game, to bring in another game. And basically from there, you start to build your network in the industry. But that's how I started out. And at the start, you might meet a lot of weird, scummy people, and it's not really something that's worth going through. It's better if you have someone who you can trust, who is in the industry. You ask them, hey, can I join a game, and let them bring you to it. If not, maybe the Facebook way is the only way to go. But ideally, I would recommend just going to Genting to play, because it's legal and there's no issue with security, and it is comfortable. There's air conditioning. You drive up the nice mountain. But if the distance is an issue, then obviously through word of mouth, you never know. There's always one friend around you that probably plays poker, because it's just such a common game amongst especially men and adult. But if not, then maybe you just find someone who really likes to gamble. They most likely have another friend. So someone around you in your network will know someone most of the time that is playing poker, in my opinion.
How many of your friends that you know, that are your friends, that plays poker? Like, could you give like a percentage?
So I can't really answer this question accurately, because a lot of my friends are people who play poker as well. So unless the question is like, you mean like friends who I knew before I started playing poker,
Yes.
or what? So when I first started poker, I don't think any of my friends really played. Let me think. Maybe actually, I have a lot of friends who played when I first started, and now they don't play anymore, or they play very, very little. Basically, we used to play together as a group
Oh,
of friends, and then from there, uh, usually it's like that. Everywhere you go in Malaysia, you can ask, or anywhere else maybe, you can ask people who go out to poker houses to play. You ask them. Basically, it happens like this: a bunch of friends play together. One of them gets better and starts winning too much, and the others just start hating the game, or they don't really want to play as much because they're not incentivized. They just keep losing. Then they just stop playing, and the one guy who keeps winning wants to continue playing. So then that one guy will go out and play. And he'll find a way, and then he meets other guys who are also winners, and they go out and they play against each other, and then it's a really competitive place, and then they become better. So actually, Malaysia has one of the best poker players in the world. If you
Wait.
compare, maybe like top 5 or top 3 or top 5, I would say, compared to a lot of countries, because if there have been a lot of China people who play professional poker, or even Taiwanese who came to Malaysia. They'll be like, oh, if you can play well in Malaysia, you can play well anywhere in the world. So like I have friends who play for a living in Melbourne, Australia, who go overseas, or maybe they just play for a living here. But basically, Malaysia is a very competitive scene for poker, and we have a lot of big names in poker actually. So one of them would be Paul Pua. He's like top 3 or top 4 in the world all-time money list, but he's really old, so maybe that makes a difference. And there are many younger lads who are like below 30 who make a shit ton as well. And basically the empire, the what do you call it? There is a brand called Triton Poker in Macau. And basically that brand was started by Paul Pua and a few other Malaysians. And basically Malaysia has a huge stake in the poker industry. And the top poker players in the world, a lot of them are actually even under Paul Pua. Like they are bankrolled.
Or they're like recruited,
basically,
is it? Or
they are
do they
recruited
pay
and sponsored by Paul Pua. So like Tom Duan is one big poker player that if you know a bit of poker, you will have heard of this name, Tom Duan. And this guy is like a huge celebrity since a long time ago, and a Malaysian is his boss basically. So poker is quite an interesting thing that a lot of Malaysians seem to love and seem to play and seem to compete overseas, but it's something that is actually banned other than in Genting Highlands, Malaysia.
That's actually pretty sad if you think about it. It's like, I don't know, like everyone, it's like it has become like a sport instead of gambling, you know, because like what you said lah, you don't really need that much luck because you will need your skills on how you bluff or how you play your hand. So for you to gain that skill, you need to train, and in order to train, you have to play more games lah, like any other sport,
Play
right?
with the best.
Yeah, correct. And you play with the best. So in that way, it kind of become like a sport instead of like a hobby or like a gambling where your parents say, "Hey, don't waste your money on this shit, man."
Yeah, I mean, I respect all the training that you guys have to go through and all the, mental preparation that you guys have to be ready for. But I think downside, honestly, it's because it comes with money. Like,
Fair
you've
enough.
probably
Fair
heard
enough.
of a lot, yeah, right? You've
Yeah.
probably heard a lot of people are in debt because of gambling. And they couldn't just, like, they couldn't live, they couldn't survive because they lost shit tons, right? So I
Yeah.
think that's the biggest downside of gambling lah. But other than that, it's actually just a game, like any other.
Yeah.
In the end, it's just a game, and the only problem with being in debt is you just didn't get the basics right. You didn't get taught properly on how to manage your bankroll and how to play it, how to approach the game properly. It's like going into the field against like 10 muscular dudes and you're the skinny guy. You're bound to get injured or get knocked out. So, in my opinion, people have to be educated, especially when it comes to playing poker, because it's actually a really dangerous thing if not approached properly.
You go down the rabbit hole very, very fast
Yeah.
if you are not like
Go down really
properly.
quickly. Yep.
Yeah. If that's the case, do you think it's wise to set up like, underground tuition centers to like get the newbies started, something like, do you think
You
it's
mean like
safer?
educating
Yeah,
players?
yeah, it's like just to, instead of telling them, hey man, you should stop, don't play this, stop, don't gamble and this and that, but like if someone
Don't play
really
like
wants,
this, don't play like that, basically.
yeah, or like,
Basically, it doesn't need to be illegal for that. It doesn't need to be underground because it's education. You're not technically gambling. Even if you're teaching someone to gamble, you're not gambling. So that's not illegal. There's a lot of poker courses online, a lot of coaches overseas that you can go for the courses. But it's extremely expensive to be taught by a good mentor or poker coach, especially if it's not just a course that you just watch. If it's a one-to-one, like same as any like maths tuition or anything like that, it costs a lot. So unless you take the courses, but the courses themselves are also extremely expensive. Upswing.com.
but how
all
much
that,
is
these are-
like the range? Would you think the range?
Basically, the range is like around a few hundred US dollars for just a small course or for this specific subsection of poker. So like maybe like how to crush online poker, okay, then how to crush live poker, how to crush tournaments. So there's a lot of type of poker. Tournaments especially are the ones that are not as much like gambling because everyone just buys in with, let's say, this amount of money and then they get this amount of chips. they sit down and they battle to the death.
It's
The
more
first,
fair and square lah. Like everyone
it's more
starts from
fair,
the
as in
same
you
place.
have no pressure
Yeah.
of losing the money. As in, because people who are playing with their real money sitting on the table, let's say it's 5,000, then it's 5,000 to lose. But if you buy it for $100, the chips here are maybe 50,000, but it's all just worth $100. But the feeling is actually different. You wouldn't say it's easier to just lose it all, because now you know that it's a fair field and you can't blame it on anything except yourself or maybe luck. And if you lose, you can't re-buy back in. Basically, the $100 is burned and you can't buy back in. You just get eliminated. Whereas if you lose in a poker game, like a cash game, you can buy back in with another 5,000 and win. But this one, your $100 is 100% gone. You might have to go to the next tournament, $100 again. Oh, you lost again. $100, you lost again. So that's the problem with tournaments. But it's not really a problem. It's just the way it works. So depends on what. So every player is different. Some players play just exclusively tournaments. Some players exclusively play cash games. Some play both. Most people play both, actually.
Then what do you think will earn you more money, or more like which outcomes is
run,
better?
money?
Yeah, either cash or tournament. Which one? Let's just say
Okay.
you're going in with like 100,000 ringgit or $100,000. Which one would you recommend that person to go for? Tournament or
Okay,
cash
if you
game?
are an experienced person, definitely cash games would be more profitable. Actually, regardless if you're experienced or not, cash games are always going to be more profitable because people sit down, they lose their money, and then they don't really know how to play in cash games most of the time. Whereas in tournaments, most people have an idea of what to do or what not to do. They want to end up at the end. So cash games
see.
are the way people grind and make a lot of money most of the time. But I do know that people who just join tournaments. But the problem with tournaments is there's even more variance. That let's say you join. Let's say in 1 year there's 30 tournaments you can join. You might be up to your 29th tournament and you haven't even made any money in all the 29th ones. But on the 30th one, maybe you got first place out of 1,000 people, you got $1 million. So you might cover everything back in one shot. So with tournaments, it's completely different. With cash games, you have winning sessions, losing sessions, winning sessions, losing sessions.
It's more
a bit
fast.
more
It's like a fast game. It's like a
Yeah, it's more- it's-
faster roller. You can say so.
yeah, it's more predictable and all that lah.
I see.
Right, Mr. K, can I ask, like, could you tell us how much have you lost before, like in a game or something?
In one session,
You could tell us more, maybe one session or, in a roll or something?
so I can tell you for one specific month, I don't play super big games, so I only play like 5, 10 or 10, 20, which is considerably small. You buy them for 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. But at the worst one that I ever had, I was down around 50,000 ringgit, which is
Wow.
quite a lot for the game, for the size of the game that I play. But
That's the price of a my view.
yeah, but there
Fresh
was,
my view.
but there was a cushion because I also won a lot before that. So again, it's just part of variance. But that specific one, it was because of my emotional like I couldn't control my tilt. When you're running really bad, when you're unlucky, you just feel like there's no way I'm this unlucky. So sometimes you fight even harder and you go down the rabbit hole even deeper. So sometimes it's okay to take a step back and just take a breather and maybe just stop. So that maybe today, most I want to lose is this amount. If I lose over this, I know I'm going to tilt. I'm just going to stop and I'll just come back another day. If I lose another day, okay, it's okay. Then another day, another day. There's always live. The most important thing is live to fight another day in poker. Just go all in now. Maybe you bought it for 5,000. You only left with $500. You don't just say go all in now and just burn that 500, which I've done too many times. This mistake, you're like, oh, this is the last, whatever. Maybe like screw it. But sometimes you have to just remember that even the small amounts add up to big amounts in the end.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have to be aware of these kinds of things.
I see.
But you mentioned that you're not a frequent player right now, is it?
Yeah, not anymore. I have other avenues that I want to focus towards. So poker has taken a sidestep, and now I'm focusing more on other things that can make more more of a consistent stream of revenue rather than poker. Poker is just, in the end, it's just the variance is just too high.
But are you still in the scene though? Like, do you still play sometimes?
Yeah, I still play a lot of the time. So at least 1 month at least I'll play 3 to 4 times minimum. But it can go up to 10 times a month. So if I check I can actually check. I actually record my sessions. So if I check from last month, from the 15th of September last month until now, 2, 4, 2, 6, 8. I've actually played 10 times from the 15th of September last month until now. So in the last month I've played 10 times, which is quite a lot. And because of those 10 times, then I got tired with it. I feel like, okay, I have had enough. I'm kind of tired now. I don't really feel any enjoyment anymore. Then I just stopped. Yeah. So I haven't played in a week or 2 weeks.
I mean, that's because that's based on what you're feeling and thinking right now. But
Yeah, I've realized that you have to actually enjoy it to be able to play well as well.
But we're unclear about the future. But would you say you would do poker, like play poker forever or something like that, like until you retire, something like when you're 50? Or do you think this is like the start?
Poker is something that I'll play throughout the entirety of my life, but just not as something that I will treat as a source of income directly, maybe a side income, side hustle, because it's just not sustainable to do something like this for an extended period of time. There's the risk that you might lose it all. But it is something that I'll play for the rest of my life, as long as my financial situation is stable enough.
Right. Thank you, Mr. K. I think
All right.
I think we've covered most of our curiosity in the underground or maybe even legal side of the poker scene in Malaysia. So, any last words you want to add for the audiences that are listening to this podcast?
Okay, so for the audience, I would say, gamble responsibly, know what you're doing. Don't
Yes.
just play poker.
But we
And
are
if
not
you are
encouraging you guys to gamble, yeah?
yes, exactly.
Not encouraging,
If
but
you are playing poker, don't just. It's easy to fall into the trap of an inflated lifestyle. Because poker is such a glamorous lifestyle. When you win big. But when you lose, you have to understand that you still have to pay the money when you lose. So always keep track of your financials and make sure that you are aware and alert no matter what you do in the poker industry.
be wise. Be wise with your money, I guess, in summary.
And be responsible.
Yeah. So I think that wraps up our podcast for today. Thank you, Mr. K, for joining us. Thank you for giving sparing your time for this podcast. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. K.
And so this is the end. If you have any ideas or recommendations for the next podcast, be sure to drop it down in the comments below. We'd love to hear, what you think or what you have to say regarding this podcast. Other than that, if you really like this content, please remember to subscribe and like this video. And if you really want to follow us in our next video, click the bell button so you can so the notification can pop up when our next video is aired. So for this podcast, we're not doing it regularly. It's more of like when we have a good idea, we will go for it. So make sure to stay tuned and hope you enjoy.
Right, thank you guys.
Thank you.